Thank you, Mr. Chairman. God, I wish I didn't have any questions. I'd yield my time to Mr. Sutherland so he could finish. I do have a few, though, Dr. Lipchenko. Are you familiar with the requirements for issuing a seismograph permit in federal waters?
I'm not sure.
Are you familiar with the permitting process that is required for the industry, the oil and gas industry, to obtain a seismograph permit, a permit to do seismic activity in federal waters? Are you familiar with that?
So I believe you're referring to permits that are issued by the Department of the Interior?
Well, by Bessie or Bohm, yeah. I mean, are you familiar at all with any of it?
Not in any detail.
Well, you should be, because they're claiming that I believe that under some of the new policy guidelines that y'all would like to take, that you would know would be more involved in those seismograph or seismic permits. Are you familiar with any of the drilling permits or P&A permits that Bessie and BOMA issue in federal waters?
So those are the responsibility of the Department of the Interior. We are often invited to provide information and to work with the department to make sure that consequences to fisheries or to habitat are adequately considered.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, and that's not the direction that I want to go, but I do want to let you know that Congressman Fleming and I sent a letter over to you yesterday involving marine life observers during well abandonment process. Are you familiar with that? Did you get to see that letter?
I did, sir.
Okay. Do you understand the context of that letter, and are you prepared to make sure that we don't have that issue again?
Yes, sir. I think that was a very unfortunate incident.
Great.
It was one that we got only a couple of days' notice that the contract had been canceled. We immediately worked to put in place emergency contracts so that would minimize the adverse consequence, and we're working on a longer-term solution.
Great, so, and I want to tell you, I do want to thank you for working with industry in finding a solution to that problem, and I appreciate that, and you should be commended for that.
Thank you, Congressman.
The concern I have is that every time I go home, it's like we have a new permit problem, okay? Mm-hmm. And now my seismic companies are calling me and saying we have a seismic permitting problem. Now, why we would suspend or the moratorium would affect seismic permitting is beyond me, because it's non-destructive. It's impossible for a seismic company to create an oil spill, but yet that permitting process is now perverted. And part of it, they're telling me, is because of some issues that NOAA or that we're trying to protect marine life. Well, if we don't get proper seismic data, it's harder for us to protect marine life when they do the drilling plans. And so I'm extremely concerned with this activity, because what has happened is these seismic companies do work all over the globe. And of course, we've chased a lot of people out of the Gulf of Mexico, a lot of good jobs. We all agree with that. We know that those facts are certainly well documented. But now, in order for us to get the data that the oil and gas companies need to fulfill the new requirements in the environmental analysis that are being required of them, the seismic permitting process is now dragging its feet. And so I was just wondering whether or not you could elaborate as to why that process would be being delayed.
Congressman, I haven't focused my attention on this issue in depth. I do know that it is important for any kind of activity to understand the full consequences of any activity. And seismic, use of seismic instruments can have the potential of having serious impacts to marine mammals. And it's under that authority with the Marine Mammal Protection Act that we have responsibilities to issue permits and to help ensure that impacts would be minimal.
Of course, I'm out of time. I could always use a lot more.
Well, the time of the gentleman has expired.